There's a few big ones. I think the biggest thing is that families get told over and over that there's nothing that they can do, and they get told by doctors, family members, friends, all kinds of people that you basically just have to, like, step back, cross your fingers, hope they hit bottom, and decide they want recovery for themselves. I'm like, if this
Yeah.
is your spouse or your kid, that kinda feels unacceptable, you know?
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Willpower podcast, guys. Today, I've got Amber Hollingsworth with me, a master addiction counselor with 20 plus years helping thousands of families, founder of Hope for Families Recovery Center, and creator of Put the Shovel Down with 700,000 subscribers on YouTube. Amber, thanks for jumping on. Your no tough love approach to family recovery, teaching empathy, boundaries without ultimatums, and intervening before rock bottom is game changing. I've been through the hell myself, so I know how vital that is. Let's dive in. What's the biggest myth families believe about loving someone in addiction?
There's a few big ones. I think the biggest thing is that families get told over and over that there's nothing that they can do, and they get told by doctors, family members, friends, all kinds of people that you basically just have to, like, step back, cross your fingers, hope they hit bottom, and decide they want recovery for themselves. I'm like, if this
Yeah.
is your spouse or your kid, that kind of feels unacceptable, you know? And it's like, there's
Oh,
got to be
God.
something more than that. And actually, there is. And the reason I know that is because I've spent 20 years of helping people with addictions, almost all of which didn't want to be sitting in my office or didn't think they had a problem at first or didn't think they needed to be talking to me.
Hmm.
So there are a lot of things you can do to help someone, even if they're still in denial, even if they're not sure they want to stop. And I
Okay.
basically do a lot of teaching families what to do if they're in that situation.
Yeah. Cause I mean, I was one of those people. I was unwilling to get help because I just was so in the thick of it that my it's almost like my brain chemistry was altered. Like it was a
Yes,
depression.
yeah.
Like the neurotransmitters in my brain were wired differently after years and years of alcohol abuse. So I'm really curious about that. So you said you help people that way, like giving them little tools. Like what would be one way you could think of one on the top of your head?
Sure. Well, let me just tell you the biggest, most important thing. The biggest
Hmm.
thing is most family members, when you're in that position, of course, you're scared. You're watching someone you love, run in front of a train is what it feels like. They're
Yeah.
making bad decisions, sometimes life threatening decisions, and you're scared of what's going to happen to them. They're messing their life up and maybe even messing your life up too. And so naturally, you're desperate, you're scared. And what you do is you come at this person and you try to get them to see the problem and you try to get them to get help. And you do that the fastest way possible, which is to tell them they have a problem and they need to get help. And that doesn't
Hmm.
work very well. And what ends up happening is you get yourself in what I call the bad guy role, the villain role.
Mm.
And as long as you play the villain, you slow down the person from being able to get help because they focus on what you're doing wrong. There's always a primary
Huh.
person in an addict or alcoholic's life, like the spouse, the parent, the sister, the brother, whoever, the cousin who's in recovery, who's trying to get you, whatever. And you're trying to get this person, in your mind, you think you're helping, but it ends up being this giant power struggle. And the harder you try to convince them and the harder you try to push them, the more they just focus on you and all the things that you're doing wrong, which actually serves as a big distraction from being able to see what's going on in their own life. So you're actually distracting
Yeah.
them from seeing the problem.
Right. It's almost like it's like a defense mechanism in a
Mhm.
sense, right? It's their way of kind of deflecting instead of coming to terms with what the actual matter is at hand, which is the addiction, right? And what is the underlying reason behind it?
Exactly. Because the first time you try to maybe have a conversation with them about it, it's okay, but it's not gonna work the first time. It's gonna take a lot, and they're gonna resist that, and then you're gonna start moving into more and more desperate ways of trying to get them to do different, like spying, trying to find evidence, trying to present them with the bottles or whatever
Mm.
paraphernalia you found in the trash or whatever. They're gonna respond to that by start an argument or gaslighting you or telling you you're overreacting or just hiding and sneaking more. And the more they do that, the more you try to prove it and put it in their face, and then you just get locked
Yeah.
down into this power struggle.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, when you're talking right now, I'm just going back in my own experience here of just that's exactly what I was doing. I would deflect. I would come up with I would get louder. I would get more vivacious. I would start saying things I knew were intentionally hurtful, and I wasn't that kind of person. But under the influence, man, it was almost like if someone were to jeopardize my alcohol, right, take it away from me in a sense, and I would do anything. I would hurt my loved ones, my spouse, right? I mean, it was just insanity when you think about it. So when someone is acting that way, okay, in that situation, like I was at one point in my life, what's the best way for the loved one to kind of intervene there safely?
When you say acting that way, like you're in the middle of, like, one of those
Yes.
arguments, at that point, you
Yeah.
just need to get out of it. You just because 'cause you're
Okay.
at that point, you're fully in the villain role, you're saying all the wrong things, what you're doing is not helping, so you just need to say, "You know what? You're right, I shouldn't have said it that way," and you need to back up and go watch some Amber videos and come at this a totally different way because do not engage in that because addiction is fueled by resentment and self-pity, and if you play the villain, you're handing them the resentment card because they'll focus on that, and that will truly distract them from seeing what their own issue is. Like, for example, a lot of people talk about, like, enabling. People that talk about family recovery, they talk about enabling. And I'm like and when they do, they're either talking about giving someone money or letting them live in your house or possibly
Hmm.
just, like, covering for them or something like that. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, those are, like, enabling things. That's not great, but honestly, I don't worry too much about that. When you get yourself to that position where you're, like, literally standing in front of the door, trying to block them, having this giant argument, like, losing your mind, trying to take their keys from them, and just acting like a crazy person, that what you're doing when you do that is you're giving them the emotional currency that they will use over and over and over again for the next 10 years to keep their addiction
Yeah.
going. If you give somebody $20, it's gone in 5 minutes, whatever. You're not gonna make or break someone's addiction by $20, I promise you. But if you act like
Okay.
a screaming fool, they'll remember that over especially an alcoholic, because they replay it
Yeah.
over and over and over and over again and use that as a justification to continue doing what they're doing. So I'm like, "I don't care if you give someone $20, but do not do this." And you know they do it because 'cause they'll literally throw it in your face every argument, every time, or however long.
Yeah. That's why they try to. I think I've heard that before. You try to keep emotions out of it, right? Because if it's emotion based, then I feel like then a lot of things can go backwards, right? They can use it as fuel to kind of counteract the other person's who's caring for the addict, right, is suffering. And like, how do you do that? It's really difficult. It's such a difficult, tumultuous waters that we have to navigate when we're the loved one or the one who's suffering.
Right, because here's how that gets translated inside the mind of the person who's struggling. It gets translated into you're never happy with anything I do. You don't even see any of the good things I do. You're always critical. You're making a big deal about this. I can't believe you would treat your own husband like this. I can't believe you would treat your own kid like this. You're so controlling. You're the reason I want to drink. Like these are just a few of the thoughts that they're not just going to have them in that moment. They're going to have them in that moment and the next day and the next day and the next day. And the reason I know this well is because I've been counseling people for 20 years. And it's all they can
Yeah.
talk to me about. And eventually I figured out if I don't get these family members to stop doing this, I'm not gonna get anywhere with this person. They cannot talk about anything else other than that 1 or 2 family members. It's the only thing they can see. It drives them crazy. It's making them crazy and they fixate on it. And that's why I sort of developed all this because I'm like, I can't even get anywhere with these people. Like, I'm like, family member, y'all gotta stop. Y'all gotta stop doing this because they didn't mean to, but they were like messing me up or messing up my work.
Yeah, that's true. That makes perfect sense. Everyone has to be on board.
Hmm.
So functional alcoholism flies under the radar.
Hmm.
I know it did for me. How do families spot it when everything looks fine?
Whoever lives with the person is probably the person that's gonna see it first, and
Hmm.
they'll be seeing it long before, like, coworkers, friends, any outside anybody. Because you can kinda especially with alcoholism, you can kinda hold it together and keep down a job. A lot of people I see have really big hardcore jobs, like they are CEOs or
Mhm.
physicians or whatever, they're doing like important stuff and they're holding that together. Okay. But they start to fall apart at home. They stop dropping the balls at home first. So you start dropping the relationship balls first. Like you stop being present in your relationship. You like literally forget functions. You drink too much at a really important event and now your family's mad at you. So you start dropping those balls. And the families are the ones that see it to begin with. But if you're not sure of what you're looking at, maybe you're seeing these things and you're thinking, well, is it just a phase? Is it, they're just stressed out right now? Or is this really like a
Mm,
problem? One way that you can tell is that a person who's in this pattern of function, even if they're not drinking every day, they'll be in this cycle of making promises to themselves and to you of how it's gonna be different, and that can look like, "Okay, I'm not gonna drink anymore." More often than that, more often it looks like, um, "I'm not gonna drink liquor anymore, I'm just gonna drink beer. I'm
yeah.
only gonna drink on the weekends. I'm only gonna drink after 5 and no more than 3 at a time. I'm only gonna drink in special circumstances." And they'll set these little, I call it, like, lines in the sand, and they may
Mhm.
hold to those lines in the sand for, 5 minutes or so, not very long, a week or so, and then they'll cross those, and they'll be promising themselves. I mean, it's not even just you, like, they're having these little negotiations with themselves, and they keep breaking their own promises and their own boundaries. That's an indicator that you're dealing with someone who's having a.
Yeah, I mean, you just nailed me again. This is really remarkable. Like I kept giving myself, just okay. Well, I'll switch to this. I'll only drink on Friday, right? I was trying to justify or make
Mhm.
excuses, right, or to to kind of keep the story going because I was so afraid of losing it because it was like my best friend, but it was the thing that was killing me the quickest. Like anything
Yeah.
else would.
I call it
So it was really,
bargaining. I
really
call it bargaining. You're
bargaining.
bargaining.
That's
It's like,
that's
"I
the
don't wanna give it up completely, but I know what's going on right now is too much. Let me figure out some kinda loophole where I can, like." If people
now
create
that
these
the
fancy
pushing
formulas and systems, I mean, it gets crazy, the things people try
It
to
gets
do. I mean,
crazy.
you
It
have
gets
all this,
crazy,
I'm
Amber.
like, "Dude,
Like,
that's too
the things I
hard.
was
That's
trying to do
complicated."
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I was pushing the boundary so much but you're right, I was always inevitably trying to push it to the point where I step over that
Mhm.
line, right? Like, why is that? Why do you think that is? Why do the person struggling with a substance abuse or alcoholism, why do you think they push the boundary every time?
I think there are
Not
a
every
couple of
time, but
reasons. Some of it's just biological. I think with drinking specifically, it's just really hard to control it once you start because it turns off the off button in your brain. So the part of your brain that lets you decide this is enough and I need to stop is literally deactivated when you drink. So you
yeah, it's true,
it's
isn't it?
like it's like this, like when your breaker flip, whatever they call that, like trips. It's like the breaker's tripped because you're drinking. So even though you meant to, you trip the breaker and now you don't have the capacity with alcohol because it
Yeah,
turns that part off. So that's one thing. The other thing is this,
yeah,
it's like on a logical level, we tell ourselves, well, I just want to have a couple, or I just want to be able to enjoy some wine with my dinner, or, I just want to be able to drink some beers with my friends at the ball game, whatever it is. But the truth of it is, when you've been drinking the way you've been drinking, what's 2 beers gonna do for you? What's 2
mhm,
glasses of wine? Nothing.
yeah,
Nothing but make you want more and deactivate the part of your
mhm,
brain that says you shouldn't, right? And so it doesn't
yeah.
work, right? It just
So do you
doesn't
think
work.
moderation in general is just a bad idea?
I think moderation when someone has an alcohol use problem doesn't work in the end. However,
Mhm,
I think it's important to let people try. I think you gotta let people run through all of their bargain.
mhm,
Because it's not until you try all those things that you're like you either come to one of 2 conclusions when you're doing the bargaining. It either doesn't work, which is the case most of the time. It's like, not that it doesn't work ever, but it doesn't work consistent. It's more like Russian roulette. It's like sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the formula and the stars line up right and I cross my fingers and stand on my left leg or whatever, and it works. And then other times the dam breaks and then the crap hits the fan and then a bunch of crap happens that you really regret. So it either just doesn't work consistently or
yeah,
for some people who have a lot of willpower, they make it work, but they're miserable because drinking just a little bit is not fun. And the amount
yeah,
of work and energy you have to put into doing that is so not worth it. And so then people end up figuring out, like, "Why am I doing this? Like, this sucks." Because, it's like I have to think about it all the time. I'm craving it all the time. I'm trying to limit all the time. So I find that when people are bargaining, kinda end up in one of those 2 camps until they're like, "I'm done with this."
Yeah. Yeah, I was bargaining my whole life trying to justify my alcoholism, just trying to get like, just please don't take it away from me. That's how I felt. So the biggest enabling trap families fall into without realizing it.
It's the bad guy role. It's the
Okay.
villain role. And, like,
Yeah.
let's say you have a loved one who's bargaining, like we're just talking about. In
Mhm.
your mind, you think someone you're like, "You're an alcoholic, you need to stop." And you think when someone says, "Well, I'm just gonna drink on the weekends or I'm just gonna do that," it makes you mad because it makes you think they're not taking it serious. But when I see that, I get happy because I'm like, "This means this person knows it's a problem and they're trying to solve the problem." So instead of standing in the
Mm,
way of telling them they can't do that or that's ridiculous or they don't really want it, okay, let's try it. Let's do it. Experiment.
yeah.
And then just try the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So instead of like trying to push against it, align with this person because it just means that they have a problem and they're trying to solve it, just like we all do.
So yeah, so what does that look like? What does that look like? Because I'm thinking of that right now in my head. Like instead of being the villain role, because it's really easy to fall into that villain role.
Mhm.
Like, please, like stop, stop. Like, I'm gonna cut you out of the home. I'm gonna cut you off. I'm gonna did it,
Yep.
XYZ. Now, what does it look like to be in a healthy relationship supporting someone who's struggling?
We have a process that we use, and I'll tell you a couple. Instead of trying to come at someone and tell them that they're screwing things up and they're a bad person, this sounds super easy, but this works. If you'll just use reflective listening and empathy statements with
Okay, let's do an
Like
example.
like, if someone let's say someone overdrinks the night before and they're feeling like dog crap the next morning or whatever, instead of saying, "You promised you wouldn't, blah, blah," and then getting into it with them, you can say, "I'm really sorry, I know you didn't mean for that to happen." They'd be like, "I didn't mean for that to happen." And they're probably gonna open up and tell you a little bit more honestly about it, "I really just meant for this, and, ah, bad, I'm embarrassed," whatever. And then if you'll just reflect to them, empathy activates the learning center of someone's brain. It actually allows them to start thinking and learning. When you come at someone emotionally, it activates the defensive part of their brain, the emotional part, which deactivates the learning. So physiologically preventing them from thinking this problem through. And
Yeah.
so it's like you're helping them
That's
figure out the problem faster and get out of denial faster just by doing that.
Yeah, and is there a good technique to opening that up? Because I bet people who are sitting here listening, watching, are like, okay, well, what's the opening like sentence? Like, what? How could I just approach it? Like, is it something like, hey, like I feel shitty all the time sometimes too. Like, is it like those kind of openings? Like, how do you relate to someone who's going through something that maybe the person has no idea of like what they're feeling or
There's a
experiencing?
lot of ways to do it, and the thing you said, like, do I say, I have mistakes too? If you've been in the villain role, the first thing to do, this'll help you get out of the villain role the fastest, is to
Hmm.
acknowledge you haven't handled it right. Admit your flaws
Ooh,
and say, "You
okay,
know what? I've been making this problem worse, and I should not have done that, and that isn't
I love that.
fair, and I've been judging you, and I've been trying to control this, and I'm not doing that
If
anymore, and I'm really sorry." Because the person's gonna be like,
Yeah,
"Finally, you admitted it." They're literally gonna be like, "Hallelujah," like,
yeah, I gotta win.
yeah, because 'cause they've been waiting for you to say that. So you can say that, but then just use their words. I'm sure they have told you how they feel 100 times, like, "This helps me to de-stress," or "I'm 22 years old, every 22-year-old drinks." Like, whatever words they use their words. If you don't have the words, like, literally repeat back to them the words they've said to you, because they will say, "Uh-huh," and then they'll tell you more. And then you do the same thing, and then they'll say, "Uh-huh," and then they'll tell you more. And as you're doing
Yeah.
that, the person will actually start to talk to you out loud about what they don't like about it and why they wanna, and then they're convincing themselves that they wanna change, as opposed to when you're trying to convince them to change, they're thinking, and even worse, saying all the reasons why they don't need to, or they're not really an alcoholic, or no, they're not like those people in those meetings, or they don't even drink every day. And when you're coming at someone like that and you're triggering them to think those thoughts and say those statements, they're convincing themselves even further into denial.
Okay, this is a good segue. Thank you for that. How do you teach boundaries that stick, but come from empathy and not blame?
Most people just don't understand what boundaries are at all. Most people, what they're calling a boundary is really a punishment or really a rule. It's either a rule or a punishment because what they're trying to do is set boundaries around what the other person can or can't do. Like, you can't live in this house if you don't go to a meeting every day,
Okay.
or you can't
Mhm.
live in this house if I'm paraphernalia. Whatever it is, it's like they're trying to control the other person. And the way
Right.
I like to think about it is you can build a fence around your own backyard. Everybody's gonna be fine with that. People get mad when you build a fence around their backyard. So boundaries are not have anything to do with another person's behavior. It has to do with you. Like maybe you want to set a boundary for yourself that you're not going to sneak and spy anymore, or you're not going to yell at that person anymore. Those are boundaries. It's rules you set for yourself, not rules you set for someone else.
Okay, so that would be the best place to start,
Yeah.
is it's rules you set for yourself, not for the other
Hmm.
person.
Like
Now
here's an example. Like here's a boundary someone might think they're setting about. They might say, "Don't call me after 6 o'clock because you're going to be drunk, and I'm sick of talking to you when you're drunk."
yeah.
That's not a boundary, that's a rule you're setting, and you're setting it really mean, and it's not gonna work. Or you could just tell yourself, "I'm just not gonna answer their calls after 6 o'clock, and I don't even need to tell them that." That's a boundary. It's deciding, "I'm not
Mhm.
gonna take calls after 6 o'clock." Or
Yeah.
yeah, it's a rule you set for yourself, not a rule you set for someone else.
And it's so funny how that whenever people think about boundaries, just it's usually the opposite almost, right?
It's like,
It's
"I'm
almost
gonna
100%
tell
the opposite.
you what you can how you can and can't treat me." It doesn't work like
Yeah.
that because you can't
Oh
control
my
that.
That's
Yeah.
true. That is so true. I've never even thought about it that way, and it's, like, blowing my mind that you're saying it so clearly. Okay, so why intervene early instead of waiting for rock bottom? That's something that you mentioned before in a couple of your videos I checked out. So why does intervening early instead of waiting for rock bottom, and how?
So my thought on it is this. I think people do have to experience uncomfortableness before they're gonna wanna change. Like, the cons have to start to outweigh the pros before you have any chance of someone changing. But if the consequences get too high, it's really hard to bring people back from. Like, if someone's already lost their children, someone's already been to prison and now they can't even get a job because they have a prison record, someone's already lived on the street. Once someone gets
Mhm,
to those, like, bottoms, as people like to think, like, severe, number 1, they get used to it. And they just get comfortable, and it doesn't even motivate them. Number 2, if they get the efforts, they feel like they've already screwed it up, they've already dug a hole so big that there's no coming back out of it, and so they're less motivated to change. So there's this sweet spot of, yeah, this person some things are gonna have to happen for this person to want to change, but you don't wanna be waiting for those really severe things because it's really hard to bring people back, and by the time that person gets there, you're done anyway. You're you're done. You're
mhm.
just compassion fatigue, you got nothing left in you, and so, I mean, I don't know, I think waiting for bottom is not
Mm.
effective and dangerous, to be honest.
I am with you. I mean, it almost killed me. It almost ended my life. I was just wasting away, I felt like. But it's hard to intervene early when you can't catch the warning signs though, right?
Yeah. But the families that usually they have the warning signs. I mean, they know long, 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 long before that
Mhm.
person
That's
does.
very true.
There's this
Yeah.
sort of sweet spot between consequences the person experiences. There has to be enough of them, right? But one
Mhm.
thing that families don't understand is even when it looks outside like someone has doesn't have consequences, they do. They're suffering, feeling really embarrassed about what you did as a breaking your promises, to feeling like dog crap every day as a consequence, feeling like you're not bringing your A game. People are suffering inside, and these are the consequences that actually make people change more than the big daddy ones that we're thinking of, because
Mhm.
those are like things that they're experiencing, and they're not telling you these out loud, but inside, they're struggling. So those consequences are already there. Letting that uncomfortableness build and having empathy for someone while they're experiencing that will get them to talk to you about it, which does something that I call build your credibility. So in our programs, we call it building your credit score. Like if you wanna buy a house, you gotta be in, like, the
Yeah, yeah.
700s. I'm like, "You're gonna have to be in the 700s before you give any opinion, okay? Do not give an opinion or a piece of advice until you know," and we teach people how to calculate it, like, if you say this, if they say this, like, get this many points or lose this many points or whatever.
Yeah. So there's like a
It's
formula
like a
to it? That's
formula
really
to it. Yeah, you
interesting.
gotta figure out what your credit score is because
Oh,
you gotta build credit with someone. Someone doesn't care what you think if you don't have any credibility, right?
yeah.
So you
Yeah.
let the consequences and you build credibility. which is the
Mm.
opposite of what they're probably doing right now. What they're probably doing right now is trying to fix the consequences. They're paying for the lawyers and asking for extra credit at the schools or whatever they're doing, 'cause they don't want the bad things to happen, but they're mad at you in the relationship, so they're yelling at you and criticizing you and telling you how you're a loser. That's the worst formula. You wanna, like, reverse that whole.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. Addiction hits the whole family. What does the damage look like day to day, though?
Day to day, it looks like this power struggle that goes on inside of the house, and no one is getting their needs met, and everyone is miserable. The addict or alcoholic is chasing their addiction. The primary family member is chasing that person just like they're
Yep.
chasing their addiction. They're chasing this and you're chasing them, and if there's anyone else left in the house, they're just like collateral damage. They're
Yes.
just either
Yes.
trying to mediate that crap or stay the heck out of it or causing a disruption over here to distract. So, you got all these other players that sort of fall into these other different roles.
Hmm. Now, in your experience, I mean, you have so much experience and you've seen so many cases. What do you find to be the most successful way to approach someone who's struggling with substance abuse issues?
With empathy.
Just empathy.
That's one of the strategies, and there's more strategies. Other strategies is instead of reminding someone that they're screwing up, remind them of who they are. Like, see their good quality and speak to those, because that's gonna create what I call, like, cognitive dissonance gap
Oh,
between
yeah.
how someone sees themselves and where their behavior is. Like, if someone prides themselves on being responsible, a good parent, on being a hard worker, being reliable, instead of saying you're not those things, say, "I know you've always been so this way." And don't say "but." Don't put the other part, let it hang, and they'll think, "But I've not been doing it lately. But I haven't been showing up like, but I could do better." So you just say, "I've always respected this about you." That creates this cognitive dissonance gap where they become acutely aware how they're not measuring up, and that creates a motivation for.
Wow. I'm just trying to think like how, like in practicality, everyone's obviously a case by case basis, and it's not just like a one generalized answer you could give. But as far as like approaching someone immediately,
Mhm,
right? Like say like someone, it's like your brother or something like
mhm.
that, right? And they've been struggling with XYZ for 10 years, and you've been the mediator. You've tried every role. You've been the villain. You've been the mediator. You've been, you name it. You've been every role in the family. And now you're just burnt out. Like, what is the next option for you? Like, what would you
You wanna get
recommend?
in what I call the trusted advisor, which is kinda like what counselors and coaches, right? Because once you've built that credibility and a person feels safe enough, they'll be open to you, and it's at that point you can influence their decisions. You cannot. I guess you can influence, but not in the way you want, like, because when you're not in that role, person will just keep making bad choices despite you, like, just to go against you, like, when you're
Yeah.
not in the right role. But when you're in the right role and someone trusts you, they'll come to you for advice. They'll ask you what your opinion is. Then you can lay it out
Hmm.
there, but not until then.
And not until you build that
Not
trust,
until you're
right?
in the right position.
Yeah. I'm thinking too, like when it's really tricky. I'm trying to like not make it so it's so personal, but it's also something I do want help with. It's when do you think people honestly get like say that they need help? Do you think it is before the bottom or it just inevitably gets there? I mean, like when do you think someone who's suffering with substance abuse issues, like when is I don't know. I don't know if I'm wording this correctly, but
There's a
do
lot
you
of
understand
moments.
like
It's not when does it
yeah.
finally happen? There's all these little moments that are called moments of clarity, and they usually happen after something goes down that the person regrets. It's that feeling of waking
Mm,
up the next day, being really upset with yourself, being sick and tired of doing. I always end up like this, and then you have that little moment where you want something to change. The problem is those moments, if they're not, it's kinda like a fire, and if you don't tend to fire, it goes away. So those
mhm,
moments can last anywhere from 10 minutes to 2 or 3 days, but probably not longer than that, right? Um,
right.
so if you think about yourself, well, you probably had 1,000 of those moments.
Right. That's why I was struggling to get that out. I was thinking of all the moments in my head that I did this instead of that. And I just, it's really hard to kind of
When you meant
regroup
it,
that.
right? When you honestly were in a place of wanting something to be different.
Yeah. I was so tired of it, living that lifestyle, but I didn't know where to go. It was almost like I was in the middle of the ocean and slowly the raft that I was on was, getting less and less air. And the people that I saw on the shore were getting further and further away. That's how I would describe it. And, when someone's like that far, because this is the thing, like, I know you like to say, like, there's no ultimatums, tough love really doesn't work. Or I'm putting words in your mouth. You can kind of help explain that a little further. But when you say that, like, so if someone's using every day and they're staying in your home, say it's like a son or a daughter, and you hear this a lot, like you have an adult parents having like adult kids living in the home, and they
Yeah.
don't know what to do with them, right? Like, and what? So if you can't do tough love, like, what is the next option?
Well, when I when I say that, what I'm not saying is, like, don't kick someone out of your house. I'm saying don't kick someone out of your house because you think that's gonna be the thing that makes them change.
Right. Okay.
Like, if someone is in your house and they're causing a lot of chaos and you're, like, literally sleeping with your wallet under your pillow and they're, like, belligerent and they're breaking things every day, it's chaos in your house, you probably need to put them out your house
Hmm.
because that's not cool and you can't live like that. But not because you
Yeah.
think it's going to make them change. Because when you put someone
Mhm.
out your house, I guarantee you the problem's gonna get worse and not better. And that's fine. That's
Right.
fine.
And
That's okay, because sometimes maybe it needs to get a little worse. But I'm just saying you need to think through why you're doing what you're doing, because a lot of people are told, like, "You're keeping them sick, you need to cut them off or kick them out because that's gonna make them stop," and I'm like, "You might need to kick them out or cut them off, but not because you think it's gonna make them change."
right. It won't just force them into a change. If anything, it'll make them more desperate, right? But on the other end of that coin, you go back into the gray water of enabling again. So it's like a really tricky dynamic.
Right, and a good way to know the difference, because it's a question I get a lot, is how do you know if you're enabling or helping? When you
Right.
help someone, you get a good feeling every single think about something you did helpful someone. You leave, you get all the good dopamine, you get all the good brain chemistry, you feel good about yourself, you feel happy. When you're enabling someone, you're doing something for them that you don't really wanna do and you feel resentful. So
Yeah.
if you're helping someone and you're feeling resentful about it, you're probably enabling. If you're doing something for someone and you have a good feeling about it, you're probably helping.
That that's twice now. You just laid it out very with like the clarity and profundity of something I've never heard before, but it's right there. It's always right there. I just didn't have the kind of capacity to understand it that way. So thank you. Once sober, how do families rebuild trust without resentment?
I think the first thing to understand is that trust is broken on both sides. We inherently think, well, the alcoholic or the addict, they need to build back their trust because they've been lying and deceptive. If you've been in this with them, you've been lying and deceptive too. This has been a whole power struggle that's been going on cat and mouse for a long time. You've been sneaking through
Hmm.
your stuff and they catch you and you say, no, I haven't. I was just on a workshop and a wife was saying she found the notes her husband was keeping on her, spying on him. Like in his phone, he had all these notes about all the things she did. I was like, that's exactly right. Like,
Yeah.
you've both been power struggling, sneaking, hiding, and it just needs to come above board. Everything just needs to come above board. You need to stop. They need to stop. Being able to have conversations without screaming at each other, that builds trust, right? Being able to work
Yeah.
through things. Everything needs to come above board, right? On both
Yeah.
sides.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going through this right now with my own wife. Like, it's really difficult to go from 7, 8 years of straight being an alcoholic to now coming up on my 3 year anniversary on the 29th. Actually, just a few days away. I haven't had a sip of alcohol, nothing, and it's been great. I'm so happy. But you're right. Like, it is difficult to kind of like, okay, like how do we kind of get away from the way we used to feel about each other? Because there was a lot of sneaking around for me, like hiding alcohol and stuff, and then, it's like it's really difficult on both ends to be upfront and honest post sobriety too. It's not just like, but hey, everything's better now. Like, remember that 10-year stretch when things were just chaos all the
Oh, yeah.
time? Like, how do you work around that? Like, what's just keeping
Well,
everything above boards?
like from the family perspective, what happens is get your hopes up and you get let down so many times that you get in this frame of mind of, I'm not going to get my hopes up. and I'm gonna be so skeptical, and I'm not gonna believe them no
Mm,
matter what they say because they done said it all before, which is probably true. Um,
yeah.
but that's that's the problem, and so you let your ego get in the way as a family member because you're like, "I'm not gonna let them manipulate me. I'm not gonna let them sneak around." Who cares? That's not the point, like, this is their problem when you let go of trying to catch them, you don't have to look for addiction, it shows it every single time. You don't have to
Yeah.
spy or look, like, trust me, if someone has a problem, the unmanageability will surface. Just sit there and wait. You don't have to look. Trust me, you'll see it.
But I feel like with that, just time, is that the only medicine for that one? Or is it just kind of realizing that and
I think
then
it's
working
realizing
from
that
there
and making a decision that you're not gonna engage in those
in
behaviors
that
anymore.
moment?
Just like the alcoholic has to make a decision every day, "I'm not gonna do this." You have to decide you're not gonna fuel that obsessive part of your brain because you're setting them up for failure and yourself up because even when they're trying really hard, you're sitting there waiting for them to fail. Like, you're testing them, 'em, you're doing all the things, which just isn't helping, and yeah, they might fall back, but that doesn't mean they're failing, it just means they're learning, right? It's a frame of
Right.
mind issue.
It's a frame of mind issue. It sure is. Now, for that person, it's the very, sober January, right?
Mhm.
Dry January is a big one. And it's like, say, it's the 26th at the very end of the month. So people, for those who are like struggling this last few days, or maybe someone relapsed and they're like, oh, I can't believe this. Like, how do I start again? Like the new year, I ruined it. What's like your best advice you could give to someone right now who let's start with a relapse. They just relapsed and now they're like, why? What do I do now? What do I do
Well,
next?
what I'd say to you know how a lot of people, when you have a relapse, like, maybe you do 12-step or whatever it is you do, they'll say, "Well, you have to start
Hmm.
over," and that can make people feel defeated and just wanna give up, and what I say is you can't undo someone's recovery, like, if someone's had, like, a significant period of sobriety and recovery, like, they were really doing well, you can't
Hmm.
take it back. They can go back and use, but they can't unknow what they know, and so what I say, I'm like, "Okay, we're gonna call this is a blip." Like, "No, we're not you're not starting over. We're not starting over." Like, we're gonna start right back where we were yesterday. No.
Yeah.
And so it
Yes.
makes
Yeah.
people feel better, like, "Okay, I can just get right back up." If you had 62 days the day before and you used today, I'm not giving you today, but if you get tomorrow, we'll go to 63. Like, you can't undo all that because when you
Y-
say that to people, people feel hopeless.
yes. Yes. So true. It's not like, okay, well, going back to the beginning of the clock. That sounds exhausting. It sounds overwhelming. It sounds like monumental feats. Whereas just saying, just a blip. Okay, now let's just pick up the pieces where we left off. But let's make sure that we're aware of that piece that we experienced right
I
there.
mean, if a person has been out there in a relapse for, like, a while, like 3 months or something, they probably are gonna have to start back from, putting themselves back together from square one, but they already built that house once and they can build it back faster. So, like, okay, even if we gotta start at square one, we already know exactly what all the steps are. Let's put them in place. We don't have to struggle and do all that other stuff.
Yeah. What do you tell it to people who they're trying to just quit? Like, I'm done with alcohol. It's no longer serving me, but I have no idea how to even go about that. Do I make new friends? Do I start drinking non-alcoholic beers? Do I stop going to functions that have alcohol around it? Like, where do you begin with them?
I would say, again, it's mostly a mindset thing, and I would say start looking for what you like and enjoy about sobriety. Because the more you see those things, the more you allow yourself to see those things, the more it's gonna fuel you. And you're actually gonna get a little ways out, and in 60 days, you're gonna look back on that other self, and you're gonna think, "Oh my god, why did I do that? It was so miserable." I'm like, "You don't even know how miserable you are right now. Wait till 30 days. You're gonna be like, 'Amber, I didn't even know it could be like this.'"
Mm,
Right? And it's
right.
gonna be life is so much simpler and easier and better because you have brain chemicals back to enjoy regular things again. Like, I know when you're in it,
Yeah.
you think, "Okay, this sucks. I've been bad. Now I have to give this thing up, and I'm never gonna have fun again, and life's gonna suck." I'm like, "No, dude, life has been sucking for you. Life's about to
Hmm.
get good for you." And if you'll just
Yeah.
shift your mindset to saying, "This is gonna be good," you'll see the good things faster. It'll be easier and easier and easier.
Yeah, that's so true. I did my first stint of sobriety before I really fell off the wagon. I was an angry dry, drunk, resentful, going to meetings and not feeling like I was gaining any information because I was just not willing to hear the information, right? It was just so someone going through that dry drunk phase. I hate the term, but it does people relate to it because it's common.
Yeah.
And they're in an AA meeting right now, and or whatever. You know what? I'm sorry, we can edit this stuff, but like AA, where do you stand on AA? Because it's such a taboo subject in recovery spaces. I'm
Yeah.
just curious where you land on it.
I'm a huge fan. I love AA. I love all the A's, but I like it all. I'm non-denominational recovery. Let's try it all.
Yes.
I like
I
all
love
of
that
it.
non-denominational recovery. Yes,
Yeah, big
I'm in the
fan.
same
Let's
camp,
try.
Amber,
I'm
same
like,
camp.
we should take a tour. We'll try 2 or 3 of these, 2 or 3 of those. Come back, give me a report. Tell me what you liked. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually heard someone say something very similar the other day. It's like for anyone to judge or have any kind of intention of like this is how you should do recovery in any way whatsoever. It's like if someone wants to eat pizza and that's how they stop drinking, okay, great. If someone wants to work out, run a 10K, okay, great. Whatever keeps you from doing the substance that is obviously ruining your life, that's okay by me. You know, non-denominational recovery in all regards, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this has just been a fascinating conversation. I really think it's going to help a ton of people, especially the family dynamics enabling part. Is there anything about that part of those of that conversation that we had that I missed that would be very helpful to someone who's in that like a loving relationship, but they're just at their wits' end?
Well, like, we've talked a lot from the family perspective, but if, like, let's say you're listening to this podcast and you're the one you're in trouble, you're the one in the doghouse or
Right.
whatever.
Travel. Right.
All these things that your loved one is doing, they're staying on your case, they're spying on you, they're trying to control you, they're manipulating, they're doing all these things. I want you to know that they're not really trying to control you. They really are scared and desperate. And they're making desperate decisions, right? And they're traumatized too. And if we could just have some grace for each other on both sides, better. Have
Yeah.
a little grace.
That's a little bit of grace on both ends
Mhm.
of this disease because just as much as you want to yell and scream and reprimand the person who's struggling, like I've been on the other end of it, and man, to hear those words, it just makes you want to almost use more and drink more, and really your self-worth really hits the ground, and that's really scary. That's when things can get really bad. I
Mm.
know first. And so this has just been a fantastic conversation. I know it's going to help so many people. Amber, thank you so much for coming on. Where's the best spot for folks to find you? YouTube,
YouTube is the best
Messenger?
place. Now, my channel has got a funny name. It's called Put the Shovel Down. And that's an old recovery saying, and it means you hit your bottom when you put your shovel down. As in, you don't have to keep digging. You don't have to lose everything. You can say, I've done suffered enough. I think I'll tap out. Put the shovel down.
Yeah, thank you. I think I put the shovel down finally. Please check out Amber's socials. Her YouTube channel, like I said, has 700,000 people. So obviously, there's a lot of people that are getting a lot of help from her channel. So please go check out her channel. And again, guys, if you found value in this episode, please like and subscribe. You can always donate too. That'd be great. And be on the lookout for many more episodes soon. Take care, and thank you so much, Amber, for coming on the Willpower podcast with Will Gordon.